All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Consulting Engineer South Africa's Gender Mainstreaming webinar, where we'll be showcasing and celebrating some of the technical women who serve in the engineering space. Now, seeing as that this program is meant to celebrate women, and today marks the 3rd of September, which means that it's been 3 days since Women's Month has ended. I think we can all agree that Women's Month is too short a time to be celebrating women all over due to their massive contribution to all of our lives. So I think everyone in attendance would agree with me if I were to say that Women's Month should be every month in the year. So to that sentiment, I'm going to say Happy Women's Month to all of the women in attendance. And yeah, I hope this program serves you well in terms of inspiring you in the field of technical engineering. So my name is Lindokuhle Mbatha, and I'll be your facilitator for today's program. And then in store for today, we will be going through the welcoming as well as a bit of context about today's webinar and the purpose of this webinar. And then afterwards, we have two talented women who have joined us for this webinar. Ms. Claire Bleazard and Ms. Confidence Tshilande. So I hope I'm actually pronouncing those correctly. So they'll be our guest speaker for today, where they'll be taking us through their journeys that have led them to the path that they currently find themselves on right now. And hopefully we would get some inspiration from that and also some motivation to actually go down the same path as well and stay within the technical route. And then afterwards, we'll be taking a Q&A session where I would like all of the participants in attendance to just post your questions. So there is a channel where you can post your questions. But also, even if you don't have any question and you just have comments regarding today's event and the presentations that will be brought forth today, you're also welcome to put those in the chat as well. Okay. So now moving on. My name is Lindokuhle Mbatha. So welcome again. And you can call me Lindo for short. I'm a power system studies engineer, and my experience includes grid integration studies, grid impact studies, and grid code compliance assessments for facilities that range from small-scale embedded generation all the way to PV facilities, wind farms, battery energy storage facilities, and hybrid facilities. And I've also been involved in projects that look into transmission network upgrades, as well as network strengthening studies in various utilities, such as those in Zambia, as well as in Tanzania. And I've also done some network strengthening studies for the South African Radio Telecommunications Observatory, or otherwise known as the Square Kilometer Array Observatory, or SKAO for short. My qualifications include a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering and a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, both obtained at the University of Mbatha. And I'm currently pursuing my Master of Engineering in Electrical Engineering in the same institution. And I'm a registered candidate engineer, and pretty soon I'll be registering as a professional engineer. So watch that space. Now, for the webinar that for today's webinar, the purpose of this webinar is dedicated to showcasing the remarkable contributions of women in engineering, and it features personal stories, insights, and advice from top professionals in the field. Additionally, it includes a social media campaign to emphasize the technical strengths and specializations of women across various engineering disciplines. So the purpose of this webinar is to celebrate technical women and to inspire more women to pursue technical specialist roles within their respective engineering disciplines. And this is an ongoing effort to raise awareness about women in technical roles and to inspire women to venture into engineering design space because, well, I think a lot of women are underrepresented within that space. Now, when it comes to pursuing, I'd say, your career development, most organizations employ a structure whereby you have both senior management roles as well as senior technical roles. And this is typically known as a matrix structure, where you find a lot of the junior engineers or junior staff reports to both a manager who deals with the day-to-day runnings of the team or the organization, and as well as to a technical specialist who actually manages the technical delivery within a project. So now within this structure, you have what is known as a dual ladder system, whereby you have two career ladders that an individual or person can pursue. One that is mainly focused on management, and another one that's focused more on the technical side. So within these companies, organizations, there are specialized team structures which separate the technical individual contributor from the management track to allow for career progression and expertise development in both areas. Now, companies use these structures to balance strategic leadership within deep technical expertise by offering a clear path for individuals to advance as either a manager of people or a manager of projects, or as a highly skilled individual contributor with significant technical influence. Now, why is this awareness important, or why do we try to actually inspire a lot of women to follow the path of the technical role? That's because globally, women hold about 32% of senior management positions in the technical sector. And this is based on an article published by Optimum, which is based on statistics that were done in 2024. Now, it goes without saying that women are underrepresented in the engineering industry as a whole, in general, either as occupying management positions or occupying a technical role. But of course, the situation becomes more dire when we look at the more technical roles, because the specific reports indicate that only 7 to 8% of vice presidents' roles within engineering or similar senior engineering management roles are only filled by women. Now, to paint a picture about what that statistics actually looks like, it means that in most situations whereby there is a gathering or a meeting of senior technical specialists in engineering, where there's at least 10 people in attendance, you'd find that only 1 out of the 10 would be a female. So in that regard, it means that there's a very, very low percentage of women in that space. And we need to try and actually advocate for a lot of our ladies to start entering into that space, because their contributions are certainly invaluable. So earning potentials of a technical senior role is comparable to that of a senior management role, specifically within organizations that do employ a structure whereby you have dual career ladders that you can pursue, either following the path of management or following the path of senior technical role. Now, reason why this endeavor is so important is because a lot of women in the past have actually played significant roles in advancing engineering and technology within the global society. And it is important for us to actually ensure that more of these contributions actually do come through in future endeavors, whereby we try to establish and build I would say the built environment of the future. Now, to highlight some of the contributions from some of the engineers, female engineers from the past, I have a list of some of the female engineers that have made major contributions to the field of engineering and technology. So the first whom I'd like to introduce is Hedy Lamarr, who is a Hollywood actress and an inventor. So during World War II, Lamarr co-invented a frequency hopping spectrum system, which was designed to prevent radio-controlled torpedoes from being jammed by enemy signals. So although the technology was not immediately implemented, it later served as a basis for our modern technology, particularly in the space of communication, such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS technologies. Now, another lady who has also made a remarkable contribution to engineering in our history is Emily Warren Rubling. She is a civil engineer, and in 1883, when her husband, Washington Rubling, the lead engineer of the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge, fell ill, Emily took on the role of being chief engineer in this project to basically innovate this project, improve on it, as well as deliver on it. So basically navigating the climates of politics, finance, and business to ensure that the bridge was finally built to completion. So she became a symbol of innovation and progress within a time whereby women didn't have much of a voice, especially in the political space and within the engineering space. And then another woman who I think holds a special space in my heart, seeing as that she's an electrical engineer and specialized in power systems, as much as much like I do, is Edith Clark. Now, she obtained her electrical engineering degree from MIT and was the first woman, the first female to actually obtain an engineering degree from MIT. And then she's best known for her invention of the Clark calculator, which is a graphical device used to solve electrical engineering problems. Now, Clark's ability to gather data about power grid contributed to the development of the smart grid technology. So I have to say that Clark is one of the giants whose shoulders I actually stand on. Now, of course, this webinar is not about celebrating the heroines of the past, but it is mainly about celebrating the titans that we have today. And on that note, we have two ladies who are in attendance who will be presenting to us their journey throughout their engineering career that has led to them reaching the heights that they have right now. So I would like to first introduce Ms. Claire Bleazard. So Claire is a digital IO&R lead at Hatch, and she serves in the AIM region. I believe that stands for Africa, India, and Middle East, if I'm not mistaken. She has 15 years of post-qualification experience as a control and automation engineer focused on digital solutions and integrated operations. Her experience includes projects in mining processes, and oil and gas industries for local and international clients. Her roles include project management and coordination of globally distributed specialist teams, and design and implementation of Integrated Remote Operations Center, or IROC for short. And these are projects that she mainly works on, and she's also involved in developing user and functional requirements for these endeavors. So she is a professional registered engineer with a BEng Electrical and Electronics degree and a BSc honors degree in mathematics. So I think that's enough from my end. I'll just hand over to Claire to take us through her journey. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Linda, for that very kind introduction. And I certainly have a long way to go before I'm in the presence of such legends from the past. But I really appreciate the opportunity today. So thank you to CISA for giving me an opportunity just to talk about my journey as a professional engineer. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claire Bleazard. I work at Hatch. As Linda said, I'm a professionally registered engineer, and my current role is Integrated Operations Practice Lead for Africa, India, and Middle East region. You got it correct. So a little bit, I just want to set the stage a little bit with where my engineering career started. I started at university. I studied electrical and electronic engineering at University of Johannesburg. I graduated first in the engineering department for 2008. And then in my final year of engineering, I also took additional third-year mathematics modules in order to be eligible to do my honors in mathematics, which I then completed in 2009. One of the big, I think, formative experiences of university was also I stayed in the Le Bonnet residence at UJ, which was a great experience for me. It really helped with those long hours of engineering classes. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit around an overview of my career, and then I'm going to focus in on some specific projects that I've worked on, and some of the themes that those kind of showed me when I was putting this together. So firstly, as I said, while I was studying at university, I applied at Hatch to do vacation work. They only offered vacation work to bursary students, so I was fortunate enough to receive a bursary. And then once I finished studying, I started at Hatch as a graduate control and automation engineer in 2010. In 2015, I registered as a professional engineer with EXA. In 2018, I was offered the opportunity to do the CISA Business of Consulting Engineering course, which for those of you that don't know is a year-long program which focuses on various aspects of consulting engineering, including the consulting engineering environment, legal aspects, finance and project delivery. This was really a great program and helped me at work to connect with a lot of senior leadership that I didn't normally interact with across the business. And then in late 2019, I moved across to our digital practice. And in 2022, I took on my current role, which is the regional lead for integrated operations within the digital discipline. So then I thought I would just focus on some of my key projects that I've been involved with over the 15 years. Firstly, when I started at Hatch, I had a number of projects related to SCADA development. So SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, and it involves developing the human-machine interfaces for operators to control plants with. This opportunity has put me in great stead now later on, because when I am doing a lot of the integrated operations project, one of the key things is making sure that our operators of plants have the right information in the right format. And so that basis in SCADA, which is still everything, every time you go to a plant, you'll see, SCADA screens that operators are using. So that was a great early opportunity for me. And then one of the things at the beginning of my career, a lot of the projects I was working on related to furnace projects. So I'll go into a bit more detail around that in the next slide. My second major period of my career was on the Transnet NMPP project. This was a long period of time, and I had multiple roles on that project, but really coincided with, I think, registering as an engineer, but also developing some good relationships within my department. And then after the NMPP project was wrapping up, and I moved back into kind of main control and automation roles, I had my first two discipline lead roles. So I was CNA lead on a FEL2 or a pre-feasibility study for a port expansion. And then also we did an accelerated pre-feasibility for Comilog, who's our client, and they really wanted to look at digital readiness for their new plant. So I took that role as a lead discipline engineer, focused on the feasibility of those solutions in 2018. And that project then progressed over many years into a full feasibility study and then into execution. And so that gave me the opportunity to see the project through the full life cycle, from basically early concept all the way to commissioning. And for that project, I was the digital discipline lead in the beginning. Well, I was digital discipline lead for the whole project, but in the later stages, we had a sub-project for the IROC, the Integrated Remote Operations Center development. And so I also took on the project manager role for that sub-project. And during this time, obviously this is a long period, and the project kind of stopped and started and came back, and as the different phases evolved. During that time, I took my first role in 2019 as a leading part of a larger project, leading a sub-part of a larger project for the digital department. So this introduced me to concepts of agile software development and all of the work that the digital department was busy with. And so, as I said in the previous slide, I then moved across to that department. And then in my current role, which I took on in 2022, I've done a number of lead roles for very specific IOC projects and also for the treating digital engineering as a discipline within our larger project. So as an addition to our control and automation studies, we also now consider what operational technology do our clients need to plan for in early phases and what other digital disciplines. So for example, artificial intelligence is obviously a huge buzzword at the moment. I mean, everyone is testing all these new tools, but a lot of our clients are interested to say, okay, how do they make their plants ready to take advantage of, for example, artificial intelligence assisted process control. So all of those kind of early pieces of work that we need to do to get the right to plan for that correctly. We've doing a lot of that kind of work in the studies, and I'm leading a number of those. So then if I reflect on my 15 years, we really see kind of four main themes emerge. So the first one are the furnace and furnace technology projects, which I'll talk about, then the oil and gas pipeline work, then a number of projects in different stages around the full project lifecycle. So all the way from PFS up to execution and project management elements of that. And then, as I said, recently we've been focusing with clients onto how to get their plants kind of digital ready, specifically with integrated operations. So I'm just going to touch, these are the four next slides that we're going to talk about. So furnace projects, this was my first experience at Hatch. I was very lucky in that my first two projects both entailed site work, which was great as a graduate engineer, getting to site, getting to see, the first one was heap leach columns and the second one was a furnace. So in 2010 at Lonmin, we rebuilt the sidewall of the furnace, and I was the junior engineer responsible for the supervision of the thermocouple installation, which is a small role, but at the time it was very exciting. I got to spend a lot of time on site, see all the intricacies of commissioning and site work, and it was a very fast-paced ramp up. So that was a great first experience for me. Hatch obviously is well known for their furnace technology, so also got to see the kind of the basis of Hatch's kind of fame in the area. Then I took on a number of roles in a number of small roles. I've called out one here, which was radar units. So at Polokwane, we installed radar sensors on the roof of the furnace. And the nice thing about this project for me was that it was just me basically with specialist input. So I got the opportunity to do the design drawings, very small design drawings, but a few of them, and then do bid evaluation and manage the installation contractor, and then do commissioning on site, and then do ongoing data analysis. So it was a great little experience of the whole kind of process of what engineering projects are. And then, as I said earlier, I'd done, this was now my second SCADA project. So we did a SCADA replacement also at Lonmin. And this opportunity, just aside from all the technical, doing the actual SCADA screens and programming and all of that, I also was given the opportunity to be an assistant or a pro kind of sub project manager, which gave me great opportunity to interact with the client, to organize all the testing. I was the only person who went to from our company, went to the site acceptance testing. So it gave me a lot of experience as a junior engineer around client engagement and managing projects and all of that, and interacting with other vendors, because we actually were one of 4 companies, I think, that did the project. So that was a great early example of how to manage projects. So that was my furnace experience. And then, so as I said, the next one was the Transnet new multi-product pipeline project. So this was a massive project where Transnet Pipelines built a new pipeline from Durban to Johannesburg, and it had a number of very complicated control systems and monitoring systems that went along with it. So my main role in this period, there was a long period and there were a lot of roles, but my main role in this period was to be a systems engineer who focused on the pipeline monitoring system. This pipeline monitoring system was specialist software developed by a company called Atmos International in the UK. So I was lucky enough to have my first overseas business trip at the time, to go do factory acceptance testing. And then my next role was to plan and coordinate the site acceptance testing of this across the whole pipeline. So this was a very challenging opportunity because it's not like a normal site where you just go and you do site acceptance testing. We had to coordinate installation of specialist measurement devices across the whole pipeline at different block valves, and then record all the information, and then do a statistical analysis and check whether the system was monitoring the pressure as it was expected to do, and then go back and remove all the devices. So it was a very complicated set of logistics to arrange cranes and trucks and all the things needed for that. And then after that one was done and we were up and running, we also did software testing for the whole pipeline. That was just the control system software. So we were acting as owner's engineer. Another company did the actual software, and we did testing and made sure that everything was in line with the standards and the specifications, and then a lot of writing of specifications and standards on behalf of the client. And one of the big highlights from this period of my career was two things. The first one was just the travel and being able to, we spent a lot of time at multiple sites along the pipeline. And then the second one was for me relationship building. Two of my mentors, so I reported directly to my actual technical mentor for EXA, which helped. And then I developed a close relationship with our project manager, who then became my mentor while we did the CISA program. And remains my mentor to this day. So I think this was a great experience because we were all traveling together, spending a lot of time on site. It really helped foster those closer relationships. And then I'm going to move on to the project that I mentioned earlier that we then took from all the way from concept to execution. So this was the Comilog 7 million ton greenfields expansion project. So Eramet Comilog is a manganese mining and processing company in Gabon, and they were looking to increase the production, to increase how much they were producing. And as part of that, right at the beginning, they had this concept of making their mine kind of digital ready and allowing for more digital systems. And so that project then became eventually into a full IROC deployment. So if I just run through the kind of history of the project. So that's a photo of me on site in Gabon. So my role at the beginning from 2018 to 2023, which was the whole period, was I was the lead discipline engineer for the digital piece of the work. And then when we went into detailed design and execution, the execution of the IROC was a new contract. And so I was then project manager of that little piece as part of the whole larger project. Um, so what was interesting about this project, as I said, was that we went from concept all the way to execution. We started at the end of 2018. We were busy with a study, and we added this digital use cases as an extra piece, and so added some more rigor to a kind of conceptual design that had been done by other management consultants. And then the project had some changes, and we had some cost savings, and we had a redesign. And so over 2019, 2020, things changed, but eventually we reached the idea that they wanted to continue with what we call an IROC. And so that then moved into digital design, detail design, and we defined all the packages. And as part of that, we had multiple different work streams that were running in parallel. And then once the detail design phase started, we then had detail design by a lot of our vendors, managing all the packages, placing orders, getting everything to site. Luckily, I wasn't the project manager of the whole project because the logistics and getting everything shipped was a big challenge. So we had our fair share of that, but at least it was part of a larger project for Hatch, which helped a lot. And this was really my first experience as a full doing all the project management activities and coordinating all the resources and whatever. So this was an excellent opportunity for me, and a great project, start to finish. And as I said, this was the detailed design and execution scope. We had 4 work streams happening in parallel. We were responsible for 3 of them. We had to look at the organizational design of the IROC, who was going to sit there, what were they going to do, what decision rights did they have. The actual building, physical building design was done by a local Gabonese contractor, and we had to review and give input to that. We also had to, make sure that the layouts and everything would work for what we were designing. And then there was a number of technology pieces that went in. So all of the video walls and the screens and the audio systems and all of that were then packaged out and designed and installed. And then finally the systems, so all the systems that needed to support the software. Um, and as part of that, we defined a end-to-end value chain simulation for them so that they could use it to help with some planning. So there was a lot of pieces that all had to happen at the same time. And at the end of the day, the facility was completed. The people were there. They were trained. And so some highlights from me, I managed 3 simultaneous work streams with 7 vendor packages and managed expert resources in 5 cities worldwide. This was obviously a lot of this was during COVID, so made it quite challenging. And this was an excellent project management experience for me. And yeah, great to see a project go all the way from concept to reality. So that leads into, I think, my current role. So as part of the digital work we'd been doing, and then as part of this project, we have been focusing globally on these kind of specialist integrated operations centers. So I now lead that sub-practice in digital for the region. And integrated operations is a way of working and collaborating where we focus on really making those decisions across silos. So I think everyone is probably familiar with what a control room does. A control room generally sits and controls a piece of the plant or multiple parts of the plant. But often there's interfaces and decisions that need to be made across those boundaries. And so integrated operations really focuses on that. And as I said, it was a fortuitous role for me because having started in control and automation, obviously I'd gotten experience with control rooms and with skaters, which is one of the key kind of considerations. What do you actually show someone in an integrated operation center? What do they put on their screens? And these designs pull a lot of facets together. So if you see here, we look at a lot of different pieces to make sure these work correctly. We need to address the technology and data. We need to address the facility, including ergonomics, layouts, etc., and then people, processes, who can make decisions, what are the roles, and so on. So all of this is very interesting to me, and I'm really enjoying my current role. It's a very kind of niche subject, but it's really interesting, and there's a lot of growth in this area. So then I just want to touch on some more broadly as a kind of technical woman, some of my leadership roles. So I was head girl at school and at residence volunteered as a peer helper. And then since 2019, I've been the chair of our South African Hatch Diversity and Inclusion Committee. We report into our broader economic employment, our EE committee, but the D&I committee is responsible for organizing a lot of our events and doing a lot of stuff around diversity and design. How do we address design from a more holistic point of view and consider diversity in that? And then I am also a member of the CISA Transformation Development Committee, although I must say I've been a bit negligent in attending lately, so CISA will have to forgive me. I'll come back. And then I just want to, I've been very fortunate over my time. So this is maybe just one for people who are considering a role in engineering. Sometimes it feels like you only travel to site and you never get to see fun places. I've been very fortunate, other than my UK trip for FATS and some of my site trips to Gabon and Zimbabwe and so on. I've also had the opportunity to do training in Singapore, and I've been to Canada for some workshops and business meetings, and to our offices in the UAE. So just reflecting on, I've had some very nice opportunities to travel, which I'm really appreciative of. And then before I finish, I just want to leave you all with a fun fact, which is across all of this time in my role and in all of my roles, I've always been a passionate Power BI developer. So I've probably developed, hundreds of Power BI dashboards and reports. This is something that I really enjoy it. As I said earlier, I'm passionate about getting operators the right information and the right data, and I like to do that as well for our teams, for project progress, sometimes for random reports that people need internally and for clients. So I've really enjoyed that tool growing and getting more familiar with it. So it's been a great sort of specialist area of technical technical specialty along with my work, which has been actually very fun. And then, some lessons learned. I think, sometimes growth and progress are not always a straight line. You kind of take on stretch roles and you might take a bit of time to catch up in terms of your actual position or your actual seniority. But it's always important to, I think sometimes our career goes through lulls and ups and downs, and, it's important to just see that overall you're kind of moving in the right direction. And then from my side, I think volunteering and leadership roles really helps expose you to broader networks in your career. Along with that, I'm going to say actually mentoring juniors, so volunteering to mentor for EXA. I've had over the years many, many mentors, a couple of whom have now registered. So, that's really been very rewarding for me to be able to help guide and shape and give advice where I can. And then from my side, good mentors are crucial. As I said in the NMPP section, I had some excellent mentors that I worked really closely with, and was extremely privileged to maintain those relationships. And then finally, I think from my side, my roles changed a lot. The digital technology and digital space is very new. So no one knows everything. It's very important to stay curious, to keep learning, and to keep asking questions. And yeah, it's not a case of you just kind of get into a new role and that's it. You have to do multiple things all the time. And it's been a privilege actually to be able to do that across my career. So I think that's it from me. Thank you so much. Back to you, Lindo.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Claire. That was sensational, really awe-inspiring. Thank you for that presentation. Okay, so I'd just like to remind our participants in attendance that if you do have any comments or any questions, please do post them on the chat. So for comments, you can post them on the chat, and if you have any questions, there's a Q&A portal section there that you can actually post your questions in there. All right, so without any further ado, I'll just move on to introducing our next speaker. And that's Ms. Confidence Tshilande. So please bear with me because, yeah, this is a mouthful. So Ms. Confidence is a senior geotechnical engineer who works at SRK Consulting in the tailings department. She specialized in geotechnical and mining projects and is also the founder of Prestio app. I hope I'm pronouncing that right as well. So it's the very first of its kind in the world, social media platform or social media networking, not social media, sorry, a social networking platform for females only around the globe. She's a registered professional engineer with EXA with a master's in engineering in geotechnical engineering from UCT and a bachelor's degree in engineering and civil engineering from UJ. So her career spans complex projects across mining, water, energy, transport, and infrastructure sectors in the country. And her work has been in numerous countries that include but are not limited to Gabon, Malaysia, Nigeria, Australia, and Cameroon, where she has delivered sustainable and innovative geotechnical solutions. She serves on the South African Institution of Civil Engineers as a geotechnical in the geotechnical division, and as South Africa's liaison for the ISSMGE Young Members Presidential Group. So Confidence was appointed by the Cabinet to serve on the Social Housing Regulatory Authority Council, and she also serves on the UJ's Council and Convocation Exco. So recognized for her impact, she was named Consulting Engineer South Africa's Young Engineer of the Year in 2021. And she also featured on the Mail and Guardian's Top 200 Young South Africans in 2022. She was also listed amongst the Inspiring 50's top 50 women in tech, and of course, her work reflects a commitment to engineering excellence, youth empowerment, and advancing women in the space of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Okay, right, that was a lot. Okay, so without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to hand over to Ms. Confidence to take us through her journey. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lindo, and for that introduction. And I'd just like to thank CISA for inviting us this afternoon to share with you some of our experience, some of the journeys that we've walked in our career path. So, as you know, as you was mentioned, I'm confident. I'm currently working for SRK Consulting, and today's conversation would be basically to reflect on my technical and leadership journey, and also the important question that I'd like to address by the end of this presentation is the question that can women lead while still doing design work? I think when I had a chat with Godfrey, he was telling me about the myth that most of the women that are in leadership roles, that you see them doing so many brilliant things out there, they have sort of slowly left the design office. And he said, it is up to me to basically break that myth, to say that you can actually be doing your design work and still do other work out there. And so the next item that I'd like to also touch on is balancing technical work, leadership roles and professional bodies and your educational growth, and also just share some of the lessons from my journey. So this is just a glimpse of my journey, which shows that I started off at St. Augustine Residential School, where I've matriculated there, knowing very well that I want to solve problems. And that's how I got into engineering, which I graduated at UG in 2013, then started my work at Auracon, where I was a bursary holder, and I went straight into geotechnical engineering. While I was there, I realized, I think I need to improve my in-depth knowledge of geotech due to its complexity. So that's when I did my master's while working working full-time, studying part-time in geotechnical engineering at UCT. And then the following year, I registered as a professional engineer with AXA. Then from there on, it's been other activities in between my day-to-day work. Just to focus, to give you a picture of my actual work, day-to-day work that I've been focusing on, as I've explained. I started off at Auracon, which is now known as Zutari, and I was a geotechnical engineer there. And then at some point in my journey, I was quite curious on what our client think. So I decided to take a role as a chief civil engineer in the government in the supply chain department, which I'll talk about in my later slide. And thereafter, where I'm at today, I'm a senior geotechnical engineer in the TDNS department at SRK Consulting. And somewhere in between, I think Lindo has shared the details of some of the things I've been doing in the past, is that including some of the recognitions I've gotten, then other leadership roles, which I will still touch on as I move on into my presentation. So this is just a glimpse of what my journey has been, just looking into the career space. What's very important is that somewhere in between, outside engineering, something that I picked up was a challenge that women are facing, either in the technical space, in the world that we live in. I think with Women's Month that we've just passed, there was a huge focus on gender-based violence and inequality in areas that we're still all exposed to and are watching in the news and everywhere else in the media of what's happening in our world, not just our country, across the world. So looking at the gaps that are faced with women, with increasing number of GBVs, domestic violence, and also looking at the gap in mentorship between young girls and other technical women out there. And I decided to found Press Your App, which is a social networking platform for women. It's more like Twitter, LinkedIn, but just for women, because in there we know that it's important for women to have a space where they can freely speak, engage, and interact with one another, which is why one of the interesting features that are there is that women are allowed to post anonymously, especially when girls are shy to talk about some of the health issues, some of the technical challenges that they may have in their workspaces. You might be thinking, this is my boss doing this. How do I talk about it? So that's why we have Press Your App, so that other women in similar spaces can engage and help other women to address some of these cases. Then one of the cases, and I think Lindo touched up on it, is the lack of representation that we still see in the workforce, specifically the technical workforce in engineering, that we're still sitting at just about 15% where we find women in the actual global technical workforce. That just shows us that we still need to do a lot of work, and we really appreciate CISA for having an event such as this, wherein we are able to encourage and inspire each other to continue to pursue and stay within the engineering field. And hence, my focus today is that as a woman, if you think you've got interest in doing other things, it doesn't need to stop you to stay within the technical and engineering space. So, like I said, the question remains, can you lead? Can women lead? Or actually, can a person lead while still doing technical design work? In some of my workspaces, actually everywhere where I've worked, we tend to see that people who rise into technical roles tend to lose that balance in going down and doing the technical work, mentoring the young ones. When I say mentoring, I mean technical mentoring, wherein you sit down and teach them the basic principles of how to solve problems, on how to do work, so there tend to be a pressure to choose. Can I be the strong manager while I stay technically sharp? By being a strong manager, it means you now look into the finances, you're now looking into the business aspects of where you're working. Can you do that and still go back behind your computer and run a model and try to solve a problem? So on the other side, we see women who still need to find to prove that they can actually excel in both spaces. There's still an assumption that women are very much strong in supportive and administrative roles, other than design or leadership. So over time, we're seeing brilliant women in the space who are doing both. Some of them are probably attending this session. I've seen some of their names here. Women that are really showing us that they can do technical work while still doing leadership roles. So let's get to it. So what I want to focus on is just to brief up or reflect back on what is over a decade of engineering lessons, and not so much of the textbook experience. So you most likely not going to be able to find some of those things in the textbook, because those are experiences that we live. Those are things that we learn as we're moving along. So this is a reflection of most of the technical projects that I did across South Africa, Uganda, Gabon, Nigeria, in Asia, Australia, UAE, and so on and so on. So with this journey, I was able to just pick up a few lessons, which I'm hoping I will be able to expose. And the picture that you're seeing there, it's when I was on site in one of the mines in Gabon. I think that was my first project outside South Africa. I was just 2 years experience then. And I remember my parents were very worried about our young girl going into a country where they don't speak English at all, or rather their primary language is Afrikaans, and we didn't have a local office there, so I was relying on just moving around with clients and the contract workers. But all I can say is that the experience was quite rewarding, and it really played a huge role in improving my confidence in work and doing work outside the country. So one of, like I said, my first role was just going straight into geotech, where I focused mostly on geotechnical design work. And that was not really limited to just one area of business. I worked within the mining space, hydropower, solar, and energy, I remember doing quite a lot of projects with Eskom and then roads as well. I did a lot of work with Sunrail, building works, small buildings, residential buildings and so on and so on. So this is just a wide variety of projects that I was exposed to working at Oregon and Zutari, which the biggest lesson I learned in that is that, as Exa would always say, that understand the complex problem, is that it's important to understand the client, the complex problem that you're dealing with, and not just what the client tells you, because the client sometimes are more limited to the end product they want, and not necessarily understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. We normally get to see this in the geotech space because not everyone in the client space really understand the complexity of the ground, the problems that we tend to face as geotech engineers. So it was very important for me to make sure that we dive into understanding the geology, the basic principle, understanding the science of what happens when ground comes into with dolomite rock, for example, and maybe clay material. What is it that we are trying to solve? So in order to do that, we needed to make sure that we continue to consult research papers, textbooks, reading on journals that have been published to understand, to say, how were this problem, similar problems solved? So across this journey, I really appreciated the importance of going deep into technical understanding, the basic principle, and understand how most of these formulas were derived and the purpose of why they were derived. I mean, we speak about the Terzaghi formulas of calculating brain capacities. We speak about all these references. So it was quite important to go deep into the basic and understand and appreciate why certain formulas are what they are today, and how were they derived, and why were they derived? What are we trying to solve? So it was quite interesting, and I really appreciated doing postgraduate along that, because it's what helped me to understand and appreciate soil mechanics. So let me not get too technical. So one of the things also appreciated is the importance of doing site investigation, understanding the technical the test that you need to do, because what you take as your test is what you're going to feed into your softwares, is what you're going to feed into your calculation, and wrong results will give you wrong answers. Wrong testing will lead to continuous assumptions, which may lead to inaccurate results or inaccurate solutions. And also the importance of applying what you do on your software with reality. That's one of the biggest lessons learned, to say, I may sit behind the computer, come up with very brilliant models, but the question is, can you apply that on site? Which is, I think, when you see here on this picture, this is a project in Nigeria where we had gullies that were eroding the land, like forming big erosion gullies, as you can see. These would tend to be as deep as 30, 40, 50 meters. And it was quite important to understand that whatever solution that we come up with, along with other disciplines in hydro, roads, transport, and everybody else that was working on the project, that it must be able to be realistic to the reality of what's happening in Nigeria. So which is why, as you can see at the back, that the solutions did not necessarily take away the land or the natural spaces that they had, that it will still appreciate what the community members would deem as a well-balanced ecosystem. So moving forward, my next role, which was a very weird role, a lot of people questioned me on why I decided to take a role in the government as a chief civil engineer, a very generic, broad title. So I was just curious, to be honest, to see that when we get a scope of work to say, please submit this tender and give us this price, what is it that happened in those rooms? What happened for them to come up with this problem? So that's when I decided that I need to go on the client side and understand how the client work, and understand the red tapes, and understand the budget process. What is it that makes them decide that we'll only put 50,000 for a geotechnical investigation, because sitting on there as a consultant, we used to get frustrated with the timelines, with the budget, with the lack of resources in order to deliver work. So I thought, for me to be able to appreciate the work I do as a professional engineer, let me get to the client side and get to understand what is it that drives the tender documents that we receive, or the brief and the scope of work that we get from the client. So it was quite a very interesting role that I had, where I was looking after infrastructure in the national head office across South Africa. So in that role, the first thing I had to appreciate was the governance principle, which is basically the politics around the work that we do. Meaning that the priorities that are set, the timelines, the deadlines that get us as consultants to run around, what is it that is behind that? A simple thing that we all understand is that elections, for example, they tend to play a major role in the priorities of projects that need to go out there to the consultants. So as you're sitting as a consultant and you are given 2 months to do a project that in your head you believe it should be done in 6 months or in a year, you must understand that there is a community somewhere behind that is complaining, that is crying about service delivery, that has been striking and doing things like that, which instead of you focusing on one project, now you have to rush and fast track a certain project that you didn't think you need to prioritize. It goes back to us as the end users. I mean, we might as well remember that in the past few years, KZN has been exposed to floods, heavy floods, and major weather changes. And then we need to start realizing that as consultant, we can't be ignorant to priorities that are brought to place due to climate changes, for example. So those are some of the things that I needed to appreciate, to say, yes, you've got your scope of work as a chief engineer that you need to focus on this, but they've just been flooded in KZN. You need to book a flight, you need to get there and assess the problem and find ways to solve it in order to prioritize the end users' needs, which is our South African residents. So what was very important is also the importance of having competent people in our government. When you get the right scope of work, you get the right consultants to do the work, our projects tend to go in faster and flawlessly. But when you get the wrong consultants in the room, when you get somebody just because they had the lowest cost without the right people to do the work, that will delay your project. You find that project that's supposed to be done within a year, you are taking 2, 3, 4 years to do it. So those are some of the challenges. And also, as a geotech engineer, I realized the importance of really prioritizing geotech work, because most of the challenges that we had when we got to site was groundwater issues. I'd go to site and be like, so why haven't you progressed with this work? Why is this project delayed? And then they tell us that the design engineers didn't tell us that we were going to encounter groundwater. Now there's no subsurface drainage, the current foundation design doesn't accommodate the complexity of the ground problem. So those are some of the things that I learned in the process, that it's important that our clients have an appreciation of geotechnical investigation, integrating with other disciplines, understanding contracts, and understanding our governing regulations, understand what the CIDB wants, understand what Treasury wants, because I would get excited and say, yeah, we've got a budget, let's do this work. But you find out that departments have got so many regulations that can only limit you to do certain work at a certain time. And if you want to motivate for it, you understand that you need to write letters, you need to provide evidence. So it was quite fascinating being at the back and sitting on the client's point of view, which made me now appreciate the type of red tapes and how to go through them and what to do in order to get the work done. So that's something I had to constantly remember, that the point is to get the work done. If it means convincing the minister, if it means convincing the director and whoever to get the work done, do that. Sit with them in the room, take them back to the basic principle, open the regulations, guidelines and everything to make sure that you get the work done properly as a professional engineer. So after doing that, it was time to go back to the consulting space again, where I decided to join the tailings department at SRK. And even that decision, people question to say, so you're a geotech engineer, now you want to go into mining, what's the thought? So as a geotech engineer, like I said, you get exposed to multidisciplinary challenges. I worked in mining, I worked in transport and all of that. But what was very fascinating for me, it's the as the tailings challenges, or rather the issue of tailings, how they work and the principle behind them, especially looking at the recent incident that we had, the Jagersfontein collapse. When I was reading through that, I'm like, it's quite interesting work that needs to go behind these big massive structures called tailings dam. And that was the biggest fascinating thing. So first thing when I got here, I had to do a work in DRC where we needed to look into the GIS term gap analysis. So it's quite important that as a technical person that you appreciate the principles that are governing the industry that you work in. Also understand the markets, also understanding the finances and different decisions. When they tell you that platinum is going down, how does that impact you as a consultant? How does that impact you as a working person? Also understanding the project finances, very important at a senior role, that you need to make sure that your financial literacy of projects is up to standard. So those are some of the things that I'm appreciating. But one thing that we do not miss is the basic approach to solving complex problems, foundation design, stability analysis, that soil mechanics and basic understanding that I needed to invest in at a younger age. It's still very important that you keep up to that. You continuously research, you read papers, you read textbooks, you read theories, and all these things, they still play a role. It doesn't matter which role you're playing, you still need the basic principle to solve the problems. And one interesting fact I had to learn in this industry is that you need to stay prepared for unexpected changes. So harsh weather services, harsh weather changes, a big event or storm may need you to change your priorities as early as now, in order to understand that your tailings dam can actually carry or will be able to stand heavy rainfalls, irregardless of how you've designed it, that you've put in design factors, you've designed for a 50-year storm and all of that. Those small changes in between keep you on your toes. And it's very important as a tailings engineer, as an engineer of record, to be aware of the things that keep the dam standing. Moving on now to the leadership roles that I've been part of. I think on the introduction, those were explained thoroughly, but what I just want to reflect on is I think my role at the University of Johannesburg. As you can see at the back, there, me sitting, this was the inauguration of our former Deputy President, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo. She was being inaugurated as the new Chancellor, who is currently reigning at the moment, or helping with the running of the institution. So my role there really helped me to appreciate our education system and the impact that we as technical people can play in certain such rooms, in influencing how certain decisions, how certain curriculum, how certain things need to be done. And what was interesting for me was that I served during COVID, where I was quite worried about our engineering students. How do they get to run tests? How do they get that experience that we used to get in the lab rooms while they are attending online? So those are certain things that it was quite important for me to be in those rooms to really think on behalf of the engineers to say, where are we taking our education system in the next future, in the next 10, 15 years? Where will our education system be? Collaborating with industry people and ensuring that our education system is not just a classroom, that all graduates that leave the institution are prepared for the workforce, you know. So lessons learned as a technical person sitting in a room of academic is that we do not take granted our experience on the ground when we moving back and integrating and interacting with academics. So that was a very fascinating one. Another thing, big role that really scared me was being appointed by the cabinet to serve with who was Minister of Human Settlement at the time. But what, as you see here, this was the Social Housing Regulation Authority Board that was being inducted in 2021. And when I got in there, I realized I was actually the only engineer. And when we sat in those meetings, one of the challenges that they were facing was the issue of geotechnical problems in most of the sites where they need to start building some of these building projects and stuff. And that's when I realized that it's quite important to get technical people in these rooms, because yes, we've got politics, we've got accountants, we had legal people, we get town planners, but it was quite important to have a geotech engineer in the room, so that when we talk about approvals, when we talk about approving a certain project, that could be sitting in a dolomite area, that could be sitting in an area that has complex soil problems. It's important that we appreciate the technical impacts that affects the rest of the projects and how they're prioritized and everything like that. And also be prepared of the politics around the role, I must say. So it was quite an experience. And outside that, I think I served at the ISSMGE, which is the Institute of Soil Mechanics and the global space. So I was representing South Africa on the Young Members Presidential Group. It was quite interesting to be in a room where you get to contribute and speak, represent South African geotech engineers and give ideas and contribute to ensure that the geotechnical fraternity is still growing and still intact. So some of the things that I still do now is being a technical speaker, like I'm doing now. Been speaking at ABSA, corporate investment banking events, and just to continue to impart knowledge to the investors and ensuring that with financial decisions that are made, that they understand the factors that the technical space, like such as tailings, have in the finances and projects and so on. And yeah, this is at the UNESCO Engineering Conference that we had just last year. And yeah, so those are some of the leadership things that I still get involved in, which in the midst of doing this, I was still going back to the office and running my models and doing my analysis and still living a very healthy and fun life as I like. So next up is to just reflect back to say, as much as women are often pushed into management, we need to make sure that we don't stay away from the design office. And my approach is that you need to remain technically active while in leadership roles. And while doing that, do not forget to transfer knowledge to your juniors. And by that, I don't mean just for them to get the EXA registration, because often once a person gets their EXA registration, we abandon the formal mentorship process around that. So it's very important that even beyond EXA registration, that our professional engineers still get mentored by more experienced engineers. We've got a lot of engineers that are going to retirement. The engineering has a crisis of the gap that is in between the close to retirement and the new generation that's coming in. So we need to make sure that we bridge that gap by making sure that we remain technically active. We continue to mentor and get that knowledge transferred. Continuous self-development is very important. I think I've reflected on that. Master's, PhD, it's a question mark. We'll talk about it another day. And then what was interesting is that after I got my professional registration, I started serving on boards. And while serving on boards, being a board of director, so my role at UJ and my role at the social housing were all board level. I realized that I need to understand what I'm doing besides just contributing technically. I need to understand what it means to be a professional director. And that's when I enrolled to go through the certification of being a professional director. And in that process, that's when you start appreciating corporate governance, ethics, everything else around being a board of director, the Kingsley Code, IT, ethics, risk management, everything else around that. So those are some of the things I needed to learn in order to see fit and to appreciate what it means to be a board of directors. So that's when I got accredited with the PDSA. I'm currently not fully active as a board director, but I really appreciate the knowledge that I got. And going forward, I think it's always important to understand what drives the boards that we see in the current firms that we sit in, the risk committee, the audit committee, the finance committees. Those are some of the things that I needed to appreciate, which is why it was also important for me to do finances, to understand financial statements. That as a board of director, when you're signing off a financial statement, I think we all might remember the Steinhoff saga. Those are some of the cases that we needed to learn to understand what brought it to be the case. What were some of the omissions? So So when you see a company running, just understand that there's a group of board of directors that need to be accountable for all the decisions that are being made. So moving on, technical work, active design project reviews, those are things that we continue to do. And in leadership position, make sure that you understand that strategic decisions and what drives that, the governance around that, understand the principle, read. Reading is very important. I think when I got to my governing role, I didn't understand what the CIDB codes meant and what they did. I had to go through so many CIDB regulations that I realized I can't do my work. I can't sit in a tender room and adjudicate tenders without going through that training, without reading, because a simple decision that disqualifies you as a consultant to win a project might be because of just one simple line that is sitting somewhere in the CIDB regulation. So it was important for me that I understand and appreciate the governing rules, the regulations that departments put in out there. Also making sure that we continue with mentoring and staying active with professional bodies that govern whatever you do. CISA, SAIC, ISMGE, those are things that we need to make sure we stay within and attending sessions such as this. So for you, by you sitting here, you are doing your part in ensuring that you stay relevant in whatever you do. And lastly, how do we bridge the gap? Basically, stay technically excellent, stay rooted in your technical excellence in order to live effectively. I think a good example is what I've mentioned when I was sitting on the cabinet role that I was appointed, the SHRA board. It was important for me to still appreciate my technical expertise or the geotechnical engineering field while sitting in that room, because those decisions influence the next project that goes out and how it gets delivered and any delays that may happen. And simple ones, I'm also encouraging technical people to not be afraid to go into those political rooms, because the country needs your expertise in order to know the type of decisions, in order to solve complex problems. People end up go back into different areas and say, why is this project not done? Why is this project not completed? And it's because we lack engineers, technical people in those political rooms. So as engineers, let's not shy away and stay in our very comfortable offices only, where you get an opportunity to get out and imply and impart knowledge in those rooms so that our country can move on to better infrastructure and delivery, project delivery. Women can and should lead while designing. It's possible. We've been seeing them and they're doing great. Institution must support flexible, inclusive leadership pathways. When you see a young engineer who's groomed and growing into leadership, do not take them away from their technical office if they can do both work. Lastly, let's keep contributing to technical brilliance, governance, and education. So beyond the workspace, as a person, you need to serve your God-given purpose. That's what I live by. I believe there's a reason why God created me and why I am still here where I am, is to do a certain work and fulfill my purpose. So let's not stay away from that. As engineers, technical people, there's a reason you exist. You matter, your work matter. You may be going through a very tough work environments and spaces, but your work matters. When you grow, when you move into different areas, you realize why you do the engineering work that you do. But remember to do that faithfully and ethically, irregardless of where you are. No shortcuts. Let's do things the right way, because things that are not done the right way, they always come back to bite us. We've been seeing cases of projects that have collapsed, that have failed. And guess where it goes to? It goes back to the engineer. Did you do your work right? Did you do it ethically? Did you calculate the things right? Did you do the right investigations? Continuous learning and embracing the 4IR. We already now moved into the 5IR. So we can't be lagging behind as engineers. We need to understand and appreciate innovation and start applying and marrying both technical and innovation and new, how do you call it, machine learning and all these other principles. We can't lag behind. Collaboration across discipline is non-negotiable. And continue to mentor and be mentored and create our pathways for others. So thank you so much. We are the enablers of the change we would like to see in the future. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Confidence. That was a brilliant presentation. I like the fact that you highlighted staying technical it's actually important for technical people to actually start influencing these decisions that are being implemented at the policy making level. Okay, so thanks everyone. I see that there are a couple of messages coming through the chats, as well as a couple of questions as well on the Q&A platform. So I'm gonna start with the questions that haven't been answered. And thank you, Claire. I see that there is one question that you've answered, and I can see that you are answering one right now. So may I perhaps maybe suggest that you pause on that one, and then perhaps maybe I read it out, and you can just
Sure.
give the answer in real time.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Lerato's question. So the question reads, Claire, you're not only very experienced and skilled in your field. I enjoyed your well-spoken and distinctive delivery of your presentation. I appreciate your focus. I appreciate you focused on your career timelines. But as women, we know there are other roles we hold that impact strongly the others, like career. What main challenges did you face as a woman, and how did you navigate those to be able to successfully realize your career milestones?
Yeah, thanks, Linda, and thanks, Lorata, for the question. I was typing a response, but I'll give it to you in person. So I think, and in fact, there's another comment in the chat, which is also around, as a woman in your field, have you navigated situations where technical expertise was undermined? So I think I'm going to take both of those from my perspective. So firstly, I think I certainly don't have all the answers. I think what I've seen as a diversity and inclusion chair is that there's definitely been generational shifts. So the women that came before me had their own way of dealing with it. Often they were the only woman on site, or they were the first woman on site that people had met. And so they certainly had a more of an attitude. I don't want to speak for everyone, but there was definitely an attitude of more like you just kind of deal with problems and kind of carry on. I think my generation has been a bit more, we're a bit firmer. We speak up when there are problems. Certainly in the very first site I was on, for example, there was no bathroom on site. And so I was kind of, I'd like to say firm but flexible. Like I stated what I needed but was flexible. So the site then arranged that we could use the management bathrooms next door. And so it was a bit of a challenge. You had to walk further, but it was at least, facilities were made available. I definitely am seeing that our younger generation, the junior engineers that are starting now, are much more vocal and much more kind of unwilling to accept any kind of behavior that kind of is unacceptable, which I think is great. Definitely people are drawing boundaries much quicker and much firmer, which I really appreciate, but there's definitely generational shifts. In terms of my technical expertise being underestimated, so I find here there's kind of two different approaches. When I'm working with people who report to me, so for example, if I'm on site and I'm supervising installation contractors, I've definitely had that where they don't want to do the job. That I just, yeah, I'm very firm, very unyielding, let's just say. So we had one situation where they refused. I needed to check 100 thermocouples, and they were like spot checking and not doing their job. And I basically made them stand next to me as we did every single one. And eventually they realized that I'm not going to let them get away with not doing every single one. So they might as well do it right the first time. And so I didn't confront any gender discrimination. I just kind of made them do the work that they needed to do. And so that I think is just, useful. You're there to do a job, just focus on the job. In terms of clients and kind of more senior people, luckily at Hatch, I haven't really experienced any significant dismissal, but clients can sometimes be challenging. In those cases, yeah, I guess you just kind of have to let the work speak for itself. As I say, I'm not overly confrontational with that. As I've gotten older and more experienced on the diversity and inclusion committee, I've gotten much better at calling out bad behavior. When I was a junior on site, I sometimes just let it slide. Nowadays, I say to people in a very nice tone, just that's an unacceptable thing to say. And that certainly helps a lot. And then the other part of that question, sorry, I know I'm going long, but I'll wrap up. The other part of that question was just in terms of personal challenges. So yes, I have a toddler. I'm a mom to a 2-year-old. It's challenging. I think the main thing that I would say is that you need to recognize that your career has phases. It has seasons. There's a season that you're going to be able to go to site every week and not have an issue, and there's a couple of months and years where you won't. So I've just been quite clear. with my bosses, what I can travel and what I can't do in terms of travel, and they've made accommodation for me. I know that I'm very lucky. A lot of people don't have that level of accommodation made for them, and that is very hard. I think the main thing I'll say is it's helpful to speak up for what you want. Don't stay silent. And at least set the expectations with people around what's doable. And then, often people are much more accommodating than you think. Sometimes it's not possible, but I think if you meet them halfway, it goes a long way to kind of making people more happier to accommodate what you need. So I think that's my answer. I hope that's answered your question, Lorato.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Clear. That was actually a wonderful answer. I strongly do agree that we need to hold people accountable for their responsibilities and also to a higher standard in terms of the work that they need to deliver. So I totally agree with that sentiment. Okay, so, and also thanks for the efficiency of killing two birds with one stone. They're addressing both questions. Right, so moving on to the next one, again from Lerato. This one is addressed to you, Ms. Confidence. So the question reads, "Hi, Confidence. Enjoyed so much your presentation. Your energy is very bright. You said you can have it all. You said you can have it all, tech or design, and managing what trade-offs in your experience." Okay, sorry. Let me just try and read that again. So you said you can have it all, tech or design, and managing what trade-offs in your experience did you do? Cause I think there is a level of intensity and time needed for designs. And as you have public experience management requires time to respond to client needs and other activities. How did you reach your sweet spot? Okay, I hope I put that question across properly. Well, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Lerato, for your compliment and also your question. So I think as an engineer, we need to understand, or rather I needed to understand that I'm an engineer, so my basic doesn't get shaken. So I mean that being an engineer, being in the design office and doing that must not be impacted by being involved in other activities. So putting client first, as you have said it, we need to put our client first. But what's very important is to communicate expectations. So there are times when you are sitting in a room with a client and they think certain project can be done within a week, as an example. It's important for you to explain to them the complexity that goes into delivering that. So having realistic timelines and setting those with clients is very important. And I think being on the other side of being a client, I also had to appreciate the fact that when I'm dealing with consultant, when I'm promising the minister that this is the timeline we need for this project, they may be getting pressures from the community or from the end users, but it's very important for them to bring them to the reality to say, there are no shortcuts. We can't bypass certain things. When you do a geotech investigation, you need to wait for the lab to give you results within a month or so. Those are the realities that you must not be afraid to communicate. I had to learn to communicate clearly as early as in my first or second year of working, to say, when your boss come and say, this is what you need to do, you need to communicate to them, you need to update them continuously, you need to give them ideas to say, right now, I've got this option to do it this way, I've got an option to do it this way. If I do it this way, this is the amount of time I think it will take to run a model, to learn a new software, for example, if you need to do that. And it's very important to realize these people are just human beings. They just need you to educate them and tell them what you need to do. I had to make a decision as early in my career that I will not be working weekends. I'm not telling engineers not to do that, but it's a personal decision I made to say, if I've got work that needs to be done, I need to work and finish it during the week. If it means finishing it a bit late in the evening, I'll do that. And the reason is because I needed to have a life to live. I realized there's other things I want to do in my life, my personal space. So I did not want that to encroach. So now I got appointed now to sit on this other extra boards and stuff. So I decided that it means I'll need to sacrifice some of my sleeping time because I want to do that and I don't want to compromise my time on projects. So I used to prepare for board meetings in the evening. If it means a Sunday night, that's fine, but you're not touching my Saturday. that's not negotiable. So that's how I found my sweet spot, communicating. I did sacrifice my evenings and make sure that I stay rooted in my priorities, which is my technical work. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Confidence, for that. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next question for the sake of time. So again, directed at you from Jabulile. It says, "Hi, Confidence. So great to hear from a fellow geotechnical engineer. It's been a joy to watch your journey and the impact you're making. Thanks for your advocacy in making engineering an attractive career choice. Interesting journey from consulting to government and back to consulting. With that insight, what would you say is most urgent for us to address in order to better collaborate with the state as consultants? Is there sufficient opportunity for interacting and networking through our VAs?"
Thank you for that, Lindo. And thank you so much, Jabulile. And by the way, when I spoke about women in leadership and technical, I was referring to Jabu. So good question over there. I think working in the government, what I learned was the importance of having technical people in the office. And I would say that was a bit heartbreaking when most of the consultants that I was working with realized that I was leaving the office, because being there was more like being their advocate to sit when I sit in management, and certain decisions had been made for consulting firms. Because I came from a consulting firm, I could sit and say, that's not possible. That's quite unfair for consultants. So it's important that we have professional engineers in our government offices. That is the basics. I think the president has been talking about professionalizing the departments. Once we have the right people in those offices, because we have a mandate as professional engineer to deliver services ethically and from ensuring safety and all of that, we know the code of conduct. It's much easier for us to use those governing principles, the EXA code of conduct, to transfer the message to the politics, to the politicians, to say, we cannot do the work unless this is done properly. We cannot do the work unless we've given this time frame. We cannot do this work unless we comply with all these regulations. So it's very important that we do that. That's the first one. The second thing is to make sure that we have the right people in our board of directors that are sitting in our government offices. I'm just that one person that served on one. But as I was sitting there, I realized it's important that when ESCOM advertise and say we need board of directors, we need more professional engineers. That is the best way. By having those engineers in the room, they tend to make it easier for consultants to collaborate and interact. And lastly, it's having, I think there was a memorandum of understanding recently done with CISA and I think City of Tshwane. Those memorandum of, those MOUs are very important that we broaden them and take them through the national mandate. So meaning that when the City of Tshwane or City of Johannesburg wants to see how to solve certain problems, they bring CISA into the room. And I mean, we've heard of the intent to have something like the engineer's office of regulation that works like the auditor general, the engineering general. Those are some of the things that if they get approved, when they get implemented, these committees need to have right, competent professional engineers in order to make the facilitation between consulting firms and the government much easier and seamless in the process. I hope I've answered it correctly. If not, yeah, we'll take it further.
No, thanks, Ms. Confidence. I think that was actually beautifully answered. I think the emphasis on making sure that we always stick to our integrity as well as our ethics is quite an important thing, because as engineers, there is a standard that, again, I reiterate, we need to uphold. Okay, so we've reached the end time of our webinar. I would have liked to actually read out the other question from Jabulile, which Ms. has answered on the chat. But before I do that, perhaps maybe I just need to consult the powers at CISA if they will allow me additional minutes, or perhaps maybe this is a good point to then wrap up. I don't know if Blessings or Godfrey, if you're there.
I'm happy to elaborate on my answer quickly.
Okay. All right. Okay, seeing as that we're not getting a response from the CISA office, perhaps maybe they're having some technical difficulties. I'll just read it out very quickly. So, hi, Claire. Wow, what a range of interesting projects you've worked on. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. I have two questions for you. And then the first one, reflecting on your journey, what differences or similarities and opportunities would you say exist for young engineers having things change or have things changed a lot? So that's a two-part for that one question. And then second one is, you mentioned your mentor that you met through the CISA BCE journey, and you said they remain your mentor to this day. What mentoring are you still receiving, and what's your advice for those wanting to seek mentoring at management level?
So thanks, Lindo, and thank you, W, for the question. Yeah, so I have answered briefly in the chat, but maybe I just want to add. So for the first one, I do think there's a bit of a change. I have seen that certainly from some of my experience that we do find some of our junior engineers that are starting are not getting opportunities as quickly. I'm not sure why that is, but certainly when I started, I mean, first experience was off you go to site, get yourself there, sort yourself out. I do think that our junior engineers starting now, there seems to be a little bit more hand-holding or concern that we need to handhold. I'm not sure why that is, but that's my experience. I think that it's maybe some advice to the junior engineers is that, perhaps put your hand up and tell if you feel that's happening to you, maybe tell people you'd like more leadership opportunities, you'd like to be more, you'd like to take on a bit of more of an ownership role, you'd like to go to site more. So at least they know, because sometimes I think there's a perception that you're kind of forcing people to go to sites. So I think some of that communication may be helpful. If you feel like you're a bit stuck, put your hand up and kind of speak a bit. Whereas in my day, I think there was a bit more of a like, okay, you kind of initiated into site work, kind of off you go. So I get that vibe. I'm not sure that's borne out by everyone's experience, but that's what I've observed. And then in the mentorship question for management level mentors, I do find that certainly you have to be more cognizant of their time. Senior level people have much less time, as Confidence was saying. A lot of them are giving up their evenings, their weekends, many of them. So yeah, you have to be cognizant. So we meet fairly infrequently, and I'm very flexible about how I can accommodate his schedule. And from my perspective, and I'm sure this is different for different people, from my perspective, I think it's very helpful to have a good relationship with the person. You have to trust them a lot. As you go into a management level mentor, the questions you're asking are, it's not just, as Confidence talked about, it's not just PDG, it's not just registering for EXA, it's much more around career progression, board of directors questions. Those are legal and complicated questions sometimes, and so you need someone you can 100% trust, and hopefully get along with well. Like, it's more of a relationship than when you're just getting some advice to register for engineering. So that would be my advice. In terms of finding that mentor, I think you have to kind of let it in some ways happen naturally, or ask people that you like and get along with for that help. But yes, so that was just the thing I wanted to add.
Thanks, Ms. K. That was a wonderful answer, and yeah, I do agree. I think if there is something that you want, voice it out there, and best believe you will find someone who's actually going to listen and who will be willing to be at your corner and make sure that you get the experience and exposure that you need and want. Okay, so I think that marks the end of all the questions that we have for today's session. I apologize for running the program over time. I think we are over by about 5 minutes. But thank you to Ms. Claire and Ms. Confidence for taking us through your journey and for taking the time to actually join us. Your stories are actually quite fascinating and inspiring. And as a young engineer myself, it makes me look forward to the career that I believe is ahead of me, because I definitely am looking into going to the more technical space as opposed to the more management space, primarily because I'm too lazy to do admin. But yeah. And to CISA, a big thank you as well for organizing this event. And thank you for nominating me to actually facilitate this event. It's been a great honor. I do apologize. I think in a couple of a couple of moments there, my nerves did get a better of me. So please do forgive me for that. But I do hope that I did justice to this event. And again, I hope everyone else also gained a lot, as much as I did from today's webinar. So having said that, thank you everyone for tuning in. I think this is a good point to, I guess, adjourn this webinar, because I do believe that there's still more to come in the near or perhaps far future. So seeing as that this is my first time facilitating a CISA event, I'm not entirely sure if I should hand over to CISA themselves if they want to do any closing remarks, or if it's a matter of calling it a wrap. So I'm not sure if perhaps maybe the CISA office can come in here.
Linda, it's your show, so you conclude and then we just end the show.
All right. Okay, thank you. So then to everyone, thanks again for tuning in. It's been wonderful. Hope to see you next time as well. Have a great day further. Goodbye.
Thanks,
Thank
Linda. Thanks,
you.
Lisa.